Hi, everyone. A very good morning to all of you. I'm Dr. Jaideep Malhota, the past president of ESAR, and I'm going to be talking on a very, very difficult topic of ethics in ART. Where is that thin line which we're going to draw? Now, with all these mushrooming of IVF centers all over the world, and especially where regulatory bodies are not really in place, and with infertility on the rise, with millions and millions of couples being affected by it, and as we do understand that the global market for IVF is on the rise and is going to rise exponentially in the times to come. And all this has really opened up a Pandora's box, because as we do understand that human reproductive technology has developed not because of doctors and scientists have actually been consumed by an overwhelming desire to play God, but it's also because of the pressure from the ordinary people who have a very desperate wish to have a child. And that's something which really pushes all of us to do whatever best can be done. And sometimes to draw a line on to what extent we would like to help a couple is the most difficult decision in our lives. Now, as we understand that every couple has a desire to complete a family, and not many of them will be able to do it on their own. And we may sometimes have to take resort to all infertility or ART services, many a times to third party reproduction. And also today, especially in countries where the regulatory mechanisms are not in place, this could be a very, very difficult decision. We do expect doctors to take their own decisions. We do expect them as an ideal person who's well educated, who's well versed with the ways of the country and the people and the ground realities, not to be really influenced by the behavior, attitudes, and philosophy of the group of people, and not to also be judgmental. But ethics is also beyond this. And many a times when we talk about ethics, we also question who are these bunch of people who would decide the philosophy of all the people on this world, because to that couple who really is wanting or striving for a baby, all that matters is a baby. How it comes, it really sometimes does not matter to them, because the pain of infertility is really very, very traumatic, and the experience and the joy of a child is actually life changing. So a lot of people question why these moral concerns limit that joy or increase that pain. Now, over the 40 years of IVF, there are three key challenges for the future of reproductive medicine. And the one and the most important is adapting to the changing social attitudes and expectations. And that's again very important for us to understand, because we keep on evolving and our social attitudes and expectations also keep on changing. And the law also has to adapt and change in response to these changing attitudes, which may not be as fast as we do expect. Scientists would do whatever can be done. And embryo research, again, is a huge, huge area, which is really, coming out with a lot of issues, which any society would definitely like to address. And the statutory limit of the 14 days of maintaining human embryos in culture has been brought into question since the publication of its research in 2016. And for the first time, it could be possible to culture embryos that long, but when, how, and what is the need is another very important thing. And the third challenge is the reprogenetics. Again, human genome has been sequenced, and we know now there are a lot of heritable genome editing interventions that can actually take place. Now, preventing the inheritance of specific genetic disorders is important, but how can we, or how long, or how much can we really stretch it is something which again is a thin line, which needs to be understood, and cumulative measures have to be taken, because what happened with the CRISPR is known to all of us. And that is how regulations, ethical, moral values have to be there in place. Because new technology is not good or evil in itself. It's all about people who choose to use it. And that's something which is important, and who really actually regulates or guides people, because there is something called as self-regulation, and there is something called as regulations from the governments or the regulatory bodies. Because there's so many issues, I don't think I will be able to do justice to all of them, but I'll try and touch upon a few of them. And the first and the foremost is the age limits. Till what age does one really think is appropriate for any couple to have a baby? Now, we have been looking at, all kinds of reports where women of all age groups have been, taking help of ART and trying to fulfill their dreams. As much as you can see in this picture, Rajo Devi, 70 years old. Now, it's important, being a mother is important, but fulfilling the duties of a parent are also very important. And looking at the age limits, we need to also take these decisions in place. And I'm very happy that the Indian ART bill has come into place. And today we know that, these age frames have been defined by our ART bill, and will make things much more easier for us IVF practitioners to practice, so that uniform practices happen. So today we have the age limits between 19 to 50 and years for a female, and between 22 to 55 years in case of a male on the day of application, or they should be married. Now, it's important that we understand this, because upper age limit for women who actually give birth to a child with IVF are often a subject of public opinion. Now, as we move forward, there are many countries which will have different age groups and different limitations, because it all also depends on how the ART segment of any country functions. Because the ones who are limited with public funded IVF, they have their own policies. And that's where the law of the land is something which we should be really following into, because how old is too old? It will differ from country to country, and from regulatory bodies to regulatory bodies, because this is a question which we all decide. Now, who should be able to have the right to treatment? Now, marital status and sexual orientation is something which has been a big question mark. Now, if I just talk about India, we know that single women can avail of all the services, but we also know that people with different sexual orientations may not be able to, because LGBTQ is not really legitimate in India. And that's why this particular group of people will not be able to avail these services in India. However, single women, whether they're divorced, widowed, or unmarried, are allowed to have ART services, in keeping in view the adoption which is allowed for single women in our country. And again, it is going to be a big drive towards looking at providing these services for that group. Similarly, seropositive couples. Sometimes, it may be there in the legislations or the regulations, but that provision is important for this sect of people. But many times the clinics may not be at par. So the efficiency of the clinic is also very, very important, so that they do not risk the transmission of the infections to their clinical personnel or other support staff. Similarly, there are a lot of questions about posthumous fertility options, even about gamete storage, because gamete storage, again, varies from country to country. So knowing the laws and regulations is very, very important, because we do understand there is a lot of cross-border reproduction also happening. And a lot of controversial cases have erupted, because sometimes some couples may go across the country or across the border and may access, fertility services. And many a times they have not been able to bring back either their embryos or their babies back to their countries. And that has generated a lot of issues all over the world. And that is why this discussion is really very, very important. Now, other times, storage of oocytes for social reasons, again, is a big question mark. Now, as we do understand that IVF, with the rates of success with IVF actually decrease with age. And there are many times young women, because of their circumstances, are not able to bear children before. Now, freezing oocyte cryopreservation and storing their oocytes at an earlier age is an option which they can utilize, and may use it at a later stage. And this we have seen all the time happening. But a lot of countries do not have national regulations on social oocyte cryopreservation, which is again a big question mark, which needs to be addressed. And that is when everyone has to come up together and basically, deliberate on these, because social circumstances may differ from time to time, and from country to country, and from circumstances all the time. And thus, these need to be really addressed. Again, who has the right to treatment? Fertility program to a woman after menopause. Now, there has been a lot of hue and cry, but we have to understand that there sometimes women attain menopause much earlier, which we may call as premature ovarian insufficiency or menopause. Many a times, especially in countries, in the Asian countries, where the age of menopause is much lower than the West, and access to the ART services has been very, very low. So many times women come, or couples come, to know about what can be done much, much later. Those are the times when fertility programs for menopausal women may be much useful. And this definitely will require donor eggs. And it is important for us to understand that, yes, we are very much worried about what kind of donor eggs, health of the women who are actually donating, the medical, the genetic, and the psychological risks which are attached to it. And also, we need to also understand that the child rearing for the recipient couple, or the age at which they actually go ahead and do this program, is also very important for a consideration for all of us to see. Now, as I said, it's not only the countries, there are different religions also which have to be kept in mind, because many of these religions, the social and the cultural traditions may be different. Some of them do not even agree at having IVF as an acceptable form of treatment. IVF for singles is not acceptable by many religions. Then gamete donation may be a big, big no. And similarly, embryo donation and surrogacy may not be acceptable by many religions. And this is something, again, needs a lot of ethical considerations. Now, sperm donation has been present from times immemorial. Now, what is important here is the identity of the sperm donor. Should it be really conveyed if the child tomorrow asks for it? Or sometimes, the recipient parents also want to know. Now, law of the land is something which we need to really follow, and the regulatory mechanisms are very, very important. The rights of the sperm donor, the rights of the clients who are actually using that sperm, the criteria by which the sperm is collected and what tests are being conducted, what history is being taken, is there any scope of genetic transmission, and how much liability can the clinic take or the ART bank take. And that is these are very important ethical considerations which actually need to be kept in place. As in our country, we know in India, the donor will be anonymous, and the client has no right to learn the identity of the donor or the donor identifying information from any other source. And the donor also is free from any responsibility to the biological offspring produced by his sperm. And these are some very, very important aspects which we need to convey, consent, and document. Similarly, the client's rights. The client should be informed of limited and potential complications involved in sperm donation, who can donate, how many times one can donate, because again, it is very important genetic material which is being shared. And I think these all liabilities and the rights, and we are the custodians of the health of our population, and we really need to understand that this is something which really needs our attention. Another very important aspect, many times we have seen, sperm banks or ART banks basically advertising on the kinds of donors they can actually supply. And many times the recipients or the couples are also very choosy. They want to be very highly selective. They may be wanting blue eyes, blonde hair, and so on. Now, these are the questions which all society has to answer, because sperm banks may keep any type. But what is important is that, yes, the children born out of such techniques also should be able to be accepted by the society according to their phenotypic appearance, because the kind of stresses these children may go or face afterwards in life, we really don't know, and we should be avoiding all those issues. Now, in our country, in India, sperm donation by a relative or a known friend is not really permitted and should not be done. Though many a times we've had the social pressure by the families that sperm donor should be from the family, and this is something which we must clearly and outrightly refuse, because this is not the law of the land. Now, a lot of ethical and legal issues are there in human embryo donation also, and as our new ART bill is coming, and I'm sure a lot of these laws will be formulated much differently about how to coordinate donation of embryos and what gametes to be used. PGT, when it came in, actually raised a lot of these ethical objections which have been there. First and the foremost concern, which always has been there in any country which does not really permit gender selection, that PGT could be misused for gender selection. And another very important ethical issue is that we do select the best embryos, but then how to deselect embryos, how do we really discard them, and the number of embryos to be discarded also again has a lot of other ethical considerations which need to be kept in place. Now, the non-disease characteristics with genetic influence such as intelligence, beauty, which leads to choose a child which meets the needs and desires of the patients is a big ethical challenge. Designer babies or babies out of a catalog. Now, as I said, science will do whatever can be done, but the onus lies on all of us to decide what the society will actually allow it to be done, because this is genetic profiling could be a huge modern eugenic movement, and that again needs a lot of considerations. Another aspect of PGT. Now, savior siblings is something which, we could select embryos that could actually produce children who are suitable to become donors for their siblings, for stem cells and all. Now, lot of times we feel that this may be on a humanitarian ground, okay, but have we taken the permission of the baby who is being born under these circumstances to donate stem cells or blood or other organs? Now, these are some things which are very, very difficult situations, and ethical lines have to be drawn. India banned commercial surrogacy some time back. India is reorganizing and has come out with the surrogacy bill. So commercial surrogacy in India is absolutely going to be a no-no. And what we may be practicing is altruistic surrogacy. And I think rules and regulations, the law is very new, and a lot of rules and regulations have to be basically, charted out in the next few months. So the correct scenario is something which we will know a little later. But yes, we know that a lot of reorganization of the ART services in our country is going to happen in the next few months. And the way we used to practice ART is not going to be the same in the next few months, because regulations are really great to have. Because it is important for us, because as I said in the beginning itself, either one self-regulates, which is again a very difficult line to draw, because so many times you could be pressurized. Law or regulations help you to draw those lines, so and also help you to say and save you from certain very difficult decisions which you may not be able to take. Now, cryopreservation has been a great asset and has helped us, improve our results as far as frozen embryo transfers were concerned. It also facilitated the couples for not having to go through, ovum pickup again and again, and also saved us from number of gametes to be discarded, which could not be cryopreserved. But today, we have reached a stage where many clinics, the CRYOTANK facilities are running out of space. Now, the major problem is how to abandon or discard these embryos which have been stored for a couple. Many a times, people do not come back and claim. If you write to them, no reply comes, and you cannot really get rid of these embryos or donate them for research, or even donate or dispose them of without the consent. And this has been a huge challenge for a lot of IVF centers all over the world. And I would say, again, streamlining the consents at the time of storage is the most important step. And just going ahead with the kind of problems we in India face, because many a times these couples are very not as educated. They don't understand the value of cryopreservation. Many a times they are not affording enough to pay for the freezing charges and also for storage. And at that point of time, it becomes very difficult for us to make them understand. But yes, it has to be documented. A good counseling session is very important, and a documentation is very important. And also, a consent should be taken that if they default in making payments for the maintenance of these embryos, then the embryos can be actually disposed of after 2 reminders by a registered post. And these are some things which will help us definitely understand that this struggle for all of us in abandoning or destructing the abandoned human embryos is a very, very difficult choice. Now, disposition of these unclaimed embryos is really, the clinical scenarios which we are all really facing with. Then comes the right of a child born through various ART technologies. I think this is now very much legalized in every possible way, especially in India, though the law is different in different countries, and that should be really respected. Because in India, we know that the birthing mother is the mother, of the child for all reasons. If supposing if the baby has been born out of artificial insemination with donor sperm, the legal rights are especially from the parents who are actually supporting, and the inheritance and all the other privileges are there with the child. However, in the case of surrogacy, the commissioning couple is the one who has, provided the genetic material, is the one who are the genetic parents. And in India, we do write their name on the birth certificate itself. And but it may not be the same for many other countries. And that's why these guidelines are very, very important for all of us. Now, coming to the ethics of economy of IVF. Now, very important and especially non-existent in our country, though it has started insurance incentives and insurance schemes for availing the infertility service. I remember we struggled at the WHO for many, many years to add that one word, that infertility is a disease. And the very reason for adding that word, infertility is a disease, was so that the insurance can be in place, because there are thousands and thousands of couples every year who are unable to have children and are also unable to bear the costs. And I think financial constraints are real, and especially for low income group patients or middle income group couples also. When we are counseling at that point of time, when you say, okay, you have only about, let's say, close to 50% chance of having a pregnancy with ART, their thoughts about going through with the treatment actually so many times change because of these financial realities. And thus, having law in place, having insurance incentives in place, having the governments also, sharing the onus of all these technology in place is very, very important. I'm very happy to say that India, after a very long time with multiple years of deliberations, has come out with the ART bill and also the surrogacy bill to prevent the misuse of the technology and also to encourage safe and ethical practices as far as ART is concerned. But we are far away from many other things. And I'm sure there are many other countries also who are facing the same issues. Let me just put it, the ethical issues raised by creating 3 genetic parent IVF. Now, that's again something which is a very complex ethical issues, which would again need a lot of understanding and a lot of deliberations on, though UK, it has been accepted, but many other countries, it is still not, it's a distant dream for us to even think about. Similarly, moral and scientific issues are some things which, especially, for embryonic stem cells, need consideration again. And again, we have to understand that these are things which will keep on evolving, and all it needs inputs from all of us. Because as we understand today, with the story of CRISPR, now CRISPR was a technology of genome editing, which we do understand was developed that we could actually edit all those dirty genes from our future generations, where babies will not suffer from certain cancers or genetic disorders or even like infections like HIV, AIDS. And CRISPR was the discovery of the 21st century. But it raised so many new bioethical, social, and legal issues that we are now wondering whether it is something which should be really put forward. And especially when we're looking at what happened to the scientists who brought about this. Now, these are some things which are very important, because the ethical issues of having designer babies, again, very, very, controversial. I can understand about healthy babies, But again, designer babies is something where gene profiling can be absolutely different, is something which is very contentious and needs to be looked into, because looking at creating scandals, scandals have always been part and parcel of ART technology. Every other day you would read something on the net. But yes, regulations are very important. As we know, because of the CRISPR scandal, how it was actually done, and how this gene editing was performed, whether consents were not taken in place, and there were a lot of modifications of the genes which can be taken over. We actually know today that in the next 40 to 50 years, we might actually be seeing the use of genetic editing and reproductive technologies for any of these designer babies, or improved athletic abilities. um, Everyone has heard about the book The Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Whatever was fiction yesterday is becoming a reality today. And technologies uh, can be very amoral, and societies have to decide on how to use them. And different societies will make different choices based on the population profile and their religious profiles and the national policies which are in place. So it's very, very important for us, all of us, to understand that yes, ethical, legal, and moral issues, I would put them all together and say that it's a very thin line, because for better or worse, human beings will not forgo the opportunity to take their evolution into their hands. But will that make our lives happier and better? That is something which all of us have to ponder. I'd like to really put you through these thoughts, and I would like all of you to ponder and, yes, draw certain lines and decide on how we should be really moving forward with these technologies. Thank you so much. And I bring you greetings from the beautiful city of the Taj Mahal, from where I come. Uh, and happy New Year and a great year ahead to all of you. Thank you.